started valuing the wrong things in this business because there was things dangling in front of me. If I get this, I'll be happy. If I do this, I'll be happy.
You lose your damn man card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. Anything for fear of being hurt, fear of somebody doing something, for wanting to gain something. When you give up that man card right, you lose some spiritual. I've never seen somebody recover from it. That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Get punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man.
I was waking up in the morning and the first thing I was doing is popping pills and smoking a blunt and starting my day.
All
Terrence
the way in, but it's like when you start judging people for the choices that they've made, you don't know the conditions and the circumstances that they were put under. You know?
He didn't raise his voice. He didn't hesitate. Just one sentence, and everything changed. They lose their damn man card. For a moment, the room felt normal, but online it didn't. Because within hours, that line wasn't just a quote anymore. It became a question, a warning, a confession, a key to something deeper. And suddenly, names started appearing everywhere. Terrence Howard, Justin Bieber, Sean Combs. But the strangest part, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't hesitate. Just one sentence, and everything changed.
Me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to fuck you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands off with somebody. A number of producers come in and make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. Speak against me, then use the same courage that it took for me to say those truths. Man to man, eye to eye, integrity and in truth. I've spent a lifetime earning the right to speak with the conviction about these truths that I speak. So if you want to tear that down, have the decency to come and say it directly to my face. And say it like a man.
This isn't...
That pause after wrong things wasn't empty. It felt heavy, like he was holding back something too large to fully explain. And then came the emotional shift. The tone changed, the energy dropped, and suddenly, it wasn't about fame anymore. It was about survival. But survival from what? That question never gets answered directly. Instead, it gets redirected towards something darker, toward patterns, toward people, toward power. The internet doesn't wait for confirmation. It connects emotion. It connects tone. It connects trauma. And that's where Justin Bieber enters the narrative again.
Listen, before y'all talk about me, y'all need to talk to me. You see, once upon a time, if a man questioned another man's honor, he didn't do it from the shadows. He had to do it out in the open, with his name, his chest out, and his chin high. Not hiding behind a keyboard or tucked behind edited clips of fair use disclaimers. You see, citing Section 107 of the Copyright Act does not give you free rein to defame, misrepresent, or harm another's reputation. Fair use is not a shield for character assassination. So here's the simple truth. If you take my words, my image, my ideas, and twist them to feed your fear and inflate your ego, if you profit off of my name while calling me a liar, then be prepared to stand behind your accusations.
In a world where power
That sentence alone changed how fans rewatched everything. Old interviews, old performances, old breakdown moments. Suddenly, they weren't celebrity struggles anymore. They became signs. But signs of what? Meanwhile, Terrence Howard keeps speaking in metaphors: manhood, integrity, pressure, loss. And the internet begins doing something dangerous. It starts translating emotion into structure, into systems, into hidden meaning. And that's when another name begins to surface more frequently in discussions: Sean Combs. Not as a confirmed fact, but as a recurring focal point in online theories. And once a focal point appears, everything starts orbiting around it. At first, it sounds like reflection, but then Terrence Howard shifts into something more
See him at a
personal.
Puffy party. Then they're not tough no more. I'm surprised that the rap game is still alive after, because the masculinity that the rappers are supposed to portray. Yeah, well, I didn't think it either. And even when my assistant said that stuff, I still was like joking it off. And it wasn't until later on that I heard other things from people that worked from him. You know, you remember that back in the times of slavery, they had a thing called breaking the buck, where they would take, not to go in a bad place, but this is how I see what's happening, the parallels with what's happening, correlates what's happening in the business. If they, back in the times of slavery, if they had like some 12-year-old slave that was just full of himself and confident and, wasn't listening, they would tie him to a log or a barrel, and a bunch of the overseers would rape him, to where when he walked around with the slaves now, he didn't have the confidence. Sure. He was broken. And it was called breaking the buck. Wow. And that's still taking place. And so to hear that people in the industry are still making young rappers who have fought the worst of circumstances, being disenfranchised, being discounted, and then they finally like, I'm gonna put it into music. I'm gonna do it in the music. I'm gonna, and get myself together. And they go and see someone, and they tell them, okay, yeah, you can have a deal. Perform fellatio on me, and you get your deal. That was what I heard while I was on Empire about some of the people in the business. And Petey Pablo, you remember Petey Pablo?
I know who that is.
Petey Pablo, talented writer, singer. Him and Young Buck wrote a song called Ho Is On. And in that song, back in about 2011 or 29 or something, because he called out all of the homosexuality taking place at those parties and those people, he was kicked out of the music business. No radio station would play his stuff. So you look for Petey Pablo, he's not around anymore. But that song, Ho It's On, they did not care. They went.
Not speaking, not engaging, just watching. And that detail hit audiences harder than anything else, because silence feels intentional when you don't understand it. Then comes the assistant story, a message that never gets fully stated on camera. I think he's trying to cut. No completion, no clarification, just silence again. And now, the internet is no longer watching an interview, it's analyzing fragments. And fragments always feel like clues. But clues to what? The narrative shifts again. Now it's not just about encounters, it's about pressure, choice, control, and emotional breaking points. Justin Bieber becomes central again in this interpretation.
Guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head. The things that they did, no matter how they did it, whether they were drunk or high or whatever, you gave up your man card. You need therapy. And that's the thing that hurts them the most. And so they end up on drugs, end up every way to try and get rid of any principles there are. And that's what the business does. And the women that trade their bodies to go and get the role, they get to the point where they have their Oscar, they have their money, but they don't have their dream. They don't have the soul that they started with. So it's like achieving don't mean anything. If I get all the Nobel Prizes from doing all of this, but in the process I have to trade out all of my integrity to do it so that they can stay in place, what benefit is that if I lose my integrity? You got to go in as a principal. And what we were brought in here as men, we produce 1,500 sperm per heartbeat for a reason, because the aggression is necessary. You don't trade that in, no matter what.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the
Hell
consequences
yeah.
when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to fuck you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands off with somebody. A number of producers come in and make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. When you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're going to get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room. And a man don't take the same things that a guy will accept. So always be the man in the room. And that's always been my whole thing, and have lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play gay roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that shit, because the man card means everything. The man card means everything.
I had no idea we were going to go this.
And he didn't dance.
That's not exaggeration. That's exhaustion in real time. And viewers don't just hear it, they feel it. Meanwhile, Terrence Howard expands his argument. He speaks about identity loss, about compromise, about internal collapse. But critics online split immediately. Some see metaphor, some see warning, some see projection. And not disagreement fuels the entire ecosystem of discussion, because uncertainty is what keeps people watching. At this point, the story stops being linear. It becomes structural. People online begin using a single phrase repeatedly: the industry machine, a system of opportunity that allegedly demands something in return. But here's where the tension rises, because no one agrees on what something means, and that ambiguity creates space for imagination, and imagination spreads faster than facts. Meanwhile, Jaguar Wright is frequently referenced in online discussions as part of broader commentary culture. But again, nothing is verified as evidence. Only interpretation exists here. And interpretation is powerful, sometimes more powerful than truth. Strip everything away, and the emotional center becomes clear. Fame is not the story. Pressure is. Justin Bieber describes addiction recovery, confusion, emotional collapse, rebuilding.
Get this, I'll be happy. If I do this, I'll be happy. I decided to stop because I felt like I was dying. My security and stuff were coming into the room at night to check my pulse. Like, people don't know how serious it got. Like, it was legit crazy scary. I was waking up in the morning and the first thing I was doing is popping pills and smoking a blunt and starting my day. So it just got scary. I basically said to myself, I'm like, God, if you're real, you get me through this season of stopping these pills and stuff. And if you do, I'll do the rest of the work. And then I did that, and then I was good from there. But I never did the actual work. I got off the pills, but I never went to the root of everything. So then I just kind of circle back around, which most people do. People take for granted encounters, and
yeah. So, yeah, I just go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. So,
That doesn't sound like luxury. It sounds like damage control. And Terrence Howard describes a different kind of damage: psychological, identity-based, existential. And together, these narratives begin forming a pattern in the audience's mind, not because they are identical, but because they are emotionally similar. And emotional similarity is enough for the internet to connect anything. The deeper viewers go, the less stable the narrative becomes. Old clips resurface, old interviews reanalyzed, old headlines reinterpreted. And suddenly, everything feels connected. But connection is not confirmation, it is perception. And perception is influenced by emotion: fear, curiosity, shock, suspicion. And that's why the story keeps expanding, because every answer creates a new question, and every question creates another theory.
It is. Petey Pablo, talented writer, singer, him and Young Buck wrote a song called Ho Is Home. And in that song, back in about 2011 or 29 or something, because he called out all of the homosexuality taking place at those parties and those people, he was kicked out of the music business. No radio station would play his stuff. So you look for Petey Pablo, he's not around anymore. But that song, Ho Its Own.
At this point, something subtle happens. The story stops belonging to the interview. It starts belonging to the audience. They edit it, reframe it, reconstruct it, until it becomes something else entirely, a narrative larger than its original parts. And in that reconstruction, figures like Sean Combs become symbolic anchors, not necessarily factual anchors, but narrative ones. And that distinction matters, because symbolic stories feel more real than incomplete facts. So what is this really? A hidden system? A misunderstood industry? Or a digital myth built from emotional fragments? Because nothing here is fully proven, but everything here is emotionally persuasive. And that's the real tension. Not truth versus lie, but meaning versus interpretation. And once that line disappears, the story never ends. It only evolves. And the deeper people go, the darker it feels. Not because it becomes more real, but because it becomes more believed.
Last time we were together, I don't know how Diddy conversation came up. That went everywhere. You remember that when we talked about the Diddy conversation, where I think he wants to, I
think he's trying to get out of there.
And then afterwards, he obviously went to prison, court, all that stuff has been done. And I don't know if you had a chance to watch the 50 Cent documentary.
Yeah, I saw it.
What'd you think about it?
50 went in. He went all the way in. But it's like when you start judging people for the choices that they've made, you don't know the conditions and the circumstances that they were put under. Like I think about those girls that did that to me when I was 4. Where did they learn it from? Who did what to them that made them think it was normal to carry this thing out? I think that a lot of us get caught up in habits that was passed down to us that aren't necessarily innate from us, but they get passed on to us. So I've got to look at him, with compassion, because you got to remember he's still us. You look in his eyes, it's the same light of God that's shining back. It's just another wave of the universe looking at it.
Come on,
Diddy. Even Epstein, all of them. What one human being does, all human beings are doing, because we're just really, what happens in the sea over here, we don't say this wave just crashed.
Interesting thing to say. If one human being does, so meaning someone taught Epstein, someone taught Diddy. When I had Suge Knight on, Suge Knight said, who did he say, Rob, that taught Diddy? He gave a name. Quincy? No, was it Quincy?
Clive
Davis. Yeah, he said Clive Davis.
Clive Davis.
Yeah, he talked about that, what Clive did early on, and then so probably somebody taught Clive, and this thing keeps. Did you hear any stories about Epstein in Hollywood, or he wasn't a Hollywood?
No, I mean, when I would hear about Chris Tucker and people hopping on the plane to go there, I didn't know that Epstein was, the bad guy that he is now. But I was like, damn, I would love to go. I didn't know what was happening.
No one talked about Epstein.
No, nobody.
Harvey, they did, but not Epstein.
They didn't talk about Epstein. I didn't know, but hell, I could have easily ended up over there if he had invited me over there, because you think, okay, I'm going with the Hollywood move. That's how you get there. Like I wasn't invited to the Puffy parties. I wasn't invited to any of those things. So there's a part of me that's so grateful that I wasn't invited. But back then I felt excluded. Back then I felt like, oh, I must be doing something wrong. I wish I had participated in some of the druggery, and then wouldn't have alienated people that were good friends that could have been good friends, because I still ended up participating in the druggery when I got older. But at the time, I just didn't want to do it because, I had these other things that were pressing upon me. Now, I didn't get stuck into druggery, but yeah, it would have been nice to take some walks. When I look back, in my 30s.
Could have ended nasty.
It could have ended nasty.
So the fact that you didn't is probably a better thing.
So the universe places you, you can't really regret anything, but there's still parts of me that's like, wow, I dodged a bullet with Epstein. I dodged a bullet because I wasn't invited to those places, but at the time I didn't see it. I heard Denzel say once how he used to be so upset about Kevin Spacey, Kevin Spacey was getting everything, had all these beautiful opportunities that even him, after everything he had done, he wasn't getting what he needed. But I remember him saying, I wouldn't want to be Kevin Spacey now.
So he was upset that Kevin was getting the opportunities?
Yeah, I'm sure he used to really want, because Kevin got a lot of great challenging stuff. And it was just, and I'm not completely sure of the full context, but hearing him say that, hearing that statement, and it was something he said in an interview that made me rethink, I'm so glad that I didn't have those opportunities that I thought I needed or wanted at the time.
Denzel seems like he had influence over you in your career.
Yeah, he did.
Honorable man?
Yeah, he gave me some other advice once. I did this table read, and I got loud, and then he took me outside. He said, listen, say you're walking down an alley, dark alley, and there's somebody at the end of the alley talking about, I'm going to kill you, you mother ever, I'm going to kill you, da, 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 da. And, he may be serious, but he said, how afraid of him are you? He's all the way at the end of the alley. He said, but if someone comes up to you and they say, I'm going to cut your throat, which one are you more afraid of? The one yelling or the one whispering? And so it made me stop being obnoxious in my acting.
Wow. What a powerful advice to give. Sometimes the lowest tone can be scarier than you having to scream.
That's the power. God whispers. God never yells.